They dropped Elias, Cade, and Takeru like a problem they didn't want to solve. The shuttle's restraint clamps hissed open with a sharp mechanical groan. 2 guards, scaled, tusked, and heavily armed, hauled him to his feet and dragged him toward the gate. The air was thick with sterilized copper and static discharge. Overhead, the prison's artificial gravity adjusted with a pulse. His boots lifted slightly, then slammed back down harder than before. "Step lively, mammal," one of them growled. Elias didn't answer. His face was swollen on one side, a bruise blooming from orbital socket to jawline. The cuffs on his wrists were tight enough to cut. He stared straight ahead, eyes scanning the alien metalwork of the corridor. Strange glyphs blinked faintly across the walls. He committed their rhythm to memory. They marched him through the checkpoint where the warden was waiting. Warden Vrokthal was a Yervani, tall, pale gray chitin plating. 6 arms tucked into an elegant uniform of black and gold. His face was motionless, ridged like a crusted coral reef. Eyes black and depthless. "So this is a Death Worlder," Vrok said, voice like sliding knives. "Smaller than I expected." Elias tilted his head. "You're taller than your profile picture. Maybe it's the lighting." The guards tensed. Vrok didn't blink. "Put him in Sector Red. Block 9. "That's," one guard began. "I'm aware," Vrok cut him off. "Let's see how long he lasts." They shoved Elias through the last door and into the cell block. Sector Red smelled like ammonia, rust, and something faintly organic, rotting but not dead. Cells were arranged in a spiral, each made for species that clawed, climbed, or slithered. The air filters buzzed weakly under the weight of unbreathable atmospheres colliding. His cell door sealed behind him with a hiss. No windows, no bed. A slab of textured polymer curved from the wall like a forgotten bone. Across the aisle, something with too many joints and glowing thoraxes watched silently from the dark. Elias took a slow breath, coughed, and sat. "Get your bearings. Analyze. Map it." His thoughts clicked into combat engineer mode, the one that kept him alive during Earth's reconstruction campaigns. This place wasn't just a prison. It was a death trap disguised as bureaucracy. The walls hummed slightly. Energy conduits? Heat recycling? The airflow was misaligned by 3 degrees. That meant the life support systems were running inefficiently, or were deliberately designed to favor certain cells over others. They wanted him off balance. Weak. The moment came fast. From down the tier, the sound of metal scraping against the floor echoed, deliberate, loud. Footsteps. Heavy. A figure emerged. Nearly 3 meters tall, mottled green with thick limbs and chitin-stitched skin armor. Behind him, 2 others smaller, but still predators. The lead creature stopped a meter from Elias's cell and grunted. "You the human?" Elias looked up slowly. "Depends. You the welcome committee?" The others chuckled. The big one didn't. "You don't belong here. This block's not for your type." "Yeah, I got that impression from the acid stench and the HVAC errors." A pause. That threw the brute off. "You joke." "No, I observe." The brute stepped closer. "You think you're dangerous?" Elias rose to his feet, calm, steady. "No, I think I'm different. But you already know that, or you wouldn't be here sizing me up instead of just ripping my head off." The tension drew tight like a pulled wire. Then, from above, a metallic snap. The observation grate. Guards were watching. Elias didn't break eye contact with the brute. "Let me guess. Vrok told you I'm soft. That you'd be doing him a favor by making me an example." The brute grinned, rows of uneven teeth gleaming. "Maybe." Elias took 1 step forward. "Close now. Eye level with the creature's chest. You want to impress the warden? Fine. But you know what happens when someone dies on day 1. Audit flags. External review. Protocol locks. Vrok doesn't want the Concord sniffing around. You kill me too early, you disappear." The brute hesitated. The other 2 glanced at each other. "Or," Elias added softer, "you walk away. You tell the others I'm not worth the hassle. And you wait. See what I do." It hung in the air for a long second. Then the brute let out a grunt that sounded like a laugh and turned away. His voice echoed as he walked back to his cell. "This one talks too much. Let's see how long he lasts." Hours later, silence returned to Sector Red. The lights dimmed to their rest cycle hue, a cold, blue glow. Elias sat alone in his cell, knees up, back against the wall. He wiped dried blood from his temple with the sleeve of his jumpsuit. From above, behind the observation mesh, one of the guards muttered, "He should have been torn apart." Another voice, lower, gravelly, responded, "He talked his way out. That's a new one." A third voice, "Rock won't like that." Elias closed his eyes, let out a slow breath, and smiled faintly. They thought they'd thrown him to the wolves. But he'd worked with worse than wolves. He'd trained wolves. And now he was inside their cage. Let's see how long they last. The furnace wasn't a metaphor. It was officially called Reactor Shaft 3. But to inmates, it was just a burn zone. A vertical crawl space carved into the prison's core where heat exchangers and plasma vents hissed with lethal unpredictability. Even the guards rarely went in without armor. That morning, Elias Cade was ordered to report there. Alone, he stood at the threshold, holding a dented heat-resistant tool case. The air was thick, moist, stinging, reeking of scorched coolant. Somewhere below, metal groaned under pressure. A guard behind him barked, "Move." Elias didn't look back. "Sure, just figuring out where I want my ashes scattered." The Irvani officer behind him hissed something in a language Elias didn't understand and slammed the gate closed behind him. He descended 3 rungs of narrow ladder into dim orange light. Steam curled around the catwalks like ghostly fingers. Heat radiated from the pipes. His skin prickled, sweat gathering in seconds. Why send me here? No camera coverage. No backup. No witness. They weren't just testing him. They wanted him dead. Elias crouched near a vent junction. The pipe insulation had peeled away, exposing glowing veins of plasma transfer tubing. He tapped the side of the pipe with a wrench. Hollow ring. Too much pressure. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A crack in the conduit. Spider webbing outward, pulsing with unstable energy. His gut clenched. If that burst, it wouldn't just kill him. It would flood the maintenance tier with vaporized coolant and ignite secondary reactions. A chain reaction was seconds away. He dropped his pack, yanked out a seal clamp and thermal adhesive, and bolted into motion. No hesitation. 10 meters away, on an elevated scaffold, a guard, one of the few who still had manual oversight of the zone, watched from a control booth. The guard was Xir'Vok, a bipedal reptilian species with wide-set yellow eyes and a face that resembled carved volcanic rock. He noticed the readings on the console spike. Warning: reactor feed imbalance detected. He leaned forward. On the screen, the human wasn't running away. He was climbing, fast, toward the vent. He straddled the junction, one foot balance on a support rail, the other brace on a pipe bracket. "Idiot," Xir'Vok muttered. Elias jammed the clamp over the crack. The tubing shuddered beneath his hands. He slapped thermal foam across the seals as the pressure surged. His goggles fogged. His jumpsuit hissed as heat soaked through it. The gauge beside him turned red. Come on, hold." With a metallic clunk, the pressure normalized. The hiss died. Silence. Then a sharp mechanical whir as the system auto-corrected. Elias slid back down the platform, coughing and drenched in sweat. He leaned against the wall, sucking air into burning lungs. Footsteps approached. Xir'Vok dropped from the upper scaffold, his boots hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He stared at Elias. "You didn't run." Elias looked up through sweat-streaked goggles. "Didn't have time to make a will." Xir'Vok tilted his head. "You risked your life for a system that was already compromised." "Yeah. Well, seemed rude to let your whole reactor blow up just to spite the warden." The silence hung for a beat too long. Xir'Vok blinked slowly. "You're smarter than you look." "I get that a lot," Elias said, "usually right before someone tries to stab me." Later, back in his cell, Elias sat with his back against the wall, arms resting loosely on his knees. He'd been given a protein block as a reward, a tasteless gray cube, but it was better than starvation. He stared at the opposite wall, his mind working like clockwork. They didn't expect him to fix it. They expected him to die trying, which meant Xir'Vok didn't just want him gone. He wanted it to look like an accident. Clean, untraceable. That made it personal. Across the hall, the insectoid prisoner with thorax plates, who hadn't spoken a word since Elias arrived, made a low, clicking sound. You fixed the burn pipe. It rasped. Elias didn't look up. Wasn't in the mood to explode. Guards talk. They watch you. Yeah, can't imagine why. I'm very entertaining. The creature leaned slightly forward. Maybe, or maybe they're waiting to see what breaks first, your body or your mind. That night, it wasn't the heat that kept Elias awake. It was instinct. He sensed it before he heard the click of claws on the walkway. Quiet, purposeful. He rolled silently to the side of his bunk, just as the cell door unlatched with a soft snap. Unauthorized. That wasn't standard protocol. They disabled the override. Someone stepped inside. Tall, thin, with shifting skin and elongated arms. No armor. No ID. Not a guard. A prisoner. Elias grabbed the only weapon he had, a jagged sliver of paneling he'd loosened earlier. He ducked low, swept the figure's legs, and drove the shard toward the throat, but stopped inches short. The attacker was already unconscious, slammed against the wall. Xir'Vok stood in the doorway, breathing hard, a stun baton in hand. Elias stared at him. What the hell? I followed him, Xir'Vok said. He bypassed 2 guard checkpoints and used a key only warden-class officers possess. You're saying Vok sent him. I'm saying, Xir'Vok growled, this wasn't a random act of violence. They both looked down at the twitching form. Elias nodded once. Then it's war. The cell doors opened with a chime and a slow metallic hiss. Another work shift. Another chance for Elias K to get shanked, vaporized, or accidentally spaced. He stepped into the corridor, like a man walking through a minefield, except this minefield hissed, clicked, and glared with alien eyes. He passed a towering brute with crystalline skin, a 3-eyed biped who always stared too long, and 2 Slithari that never stopped whispering in their fluid rasp. They didn't move toward him. Not anymore. Word had spread after the furnace. The Death Worlder didn't break. He fixed a live reactor line, survived a sanction hit, and worse, he stayed calm. Now they watched, waiting for the next move. In the mess hall, the air was thick with ozone and fermented ration rot. Prisoners sat in clusters divided by species, scent or threat class. At the far table, a dispute was brewing. 2 groups, the Tharic bone claws and a nest of Varnic screechers, were rising from their benches, gesturing in sharp, erratic motions. Their languages were sonic and scent-based, hard to follow, but Elias caught the rhythm. Dominance challenge. He exhaled and pushed his tray away. Xir'Vok appeared beside him, arms crossed, tail twitching. Don't get involved. They're about to start a blood feud over a protein tray. Not your problem. It becomes my problem when they flood the sector with screams and acid blood. Elias stood, rolled his shoulders, and walked straight toward the argument. The Tharic were squat, muscular, with bone ridges growing from their shoulders and jaws. The Varnic were tall and sinewy, their voices pitched in clicking chords that bounced off the metal walls. As Elias approached, one of the Tharic growled and turned. You, human, leave. Does not concern your kind. Elias raised a hand. You're right. It doesn't. But if you both kill each other here, the guards will gas the block. Everyone loses. A Varnic hissed, lips splitting in 3. This one dares lecture us? Elias smiled faintly. No, I offer solution. He pointed to the overturned tray at the center of the scuffle. You're fighting over dishonor, right? Food defilement, territory breach. Silence, he continued. Tharic custom says insult must be met with a counterclaim, gesture of strength. Varnic culture says insult must be echoed and silenced. Both sides blinked. No one corrected him. Elias pulled a small power rod from his jumpsuit. Standard maintenance tool, low voltage. He tossed it on the table. You both grab it. Whoever holds on longest keeps the tray. No blood. No killing. Everyone saves face. The Tharic leader narrowed his eyes. This acceptable. The Varnic hissed again, but nodded. The game began. Seconds passed. Sparks danced. The rod snapped in half. Both dropped to pieces. Silence followed, then reluctant nods. Conflict diffused. Elias turned and walked away without a word. Back at his seat, Torvak stared at him like he'd just grown a second head. You study their customs? I observe patterns, behavior, context, some of its guesswork. That guess stopped a riot. Lucky me. Torvak leaned in. The warden saw that. He's not happy. I figured. When do I get the next accident? Torvak didn't answer. That night, Elias was summoned. Not to the punishment cells. Not to labor. To Storage Sector 4, an unused bay near the central comm spine. 2 guards escorted him, silent and tense. Inside the bay, equipment crates formed a makeshift wall. Past them, a deactivated panel blinked faintly. Elias crouched. A hidden access port, military-grade encryption. One of the crates had been sliced open. Inside, discarded comm nodes. Most were junk. One, however, had a blinking diagnostic light. Curious, Elias tapped the control surface. A corrupted file tree bloomed across the display. Dozens of partial messages. Broken transmissions. He started reading. Reassigned human asset to penal ring under Warden Xir'Vok direct authorization. Incident at Survey Outpost Theta. 7 buried in diplomatic backchannel. Concord liaison approved non-transparent disposal. If exposure occurs, Earth, Concord Pact may destabilize. Elias backed away slowly. They didn't just throw me away. They buried something with me. Later, in the maintenance shaft beneath the cell block, Elias sat in the dark with Torvak, both crouched low beneath humming power lines. You were right, Elias whispered. I was planted here, not by accident. Torvak grunted. Why? There was a settlement. Theta 7. Survey outpost on the edge of Concord space. Something went wrong. Civilians died. They needed a scapegoat. Someone expendable. Someone from a death world. Torvak's claws twitched. And now, I have fragments. Not enough for the full picture, but enough to prove someone's lying. The silence between them was tense. Then Torvak said, What will you do? Elias looked up at the flickering vent lights. Same thing I always do. Survive. Learn. Break the system from the inside. Back in his cell, Elias sat down with a makeshift datapad. Old wiring, stripped relay chip, recycled lens. He began piecing together the fragments, his fingers moving in rhythm, brain burning with focus. Above, in the security station, Xir'Vok stood before the monitors. He's manipulating prisoners, influencing staff, disrupting hierarchy. Another officer hesitated. But he hasn't broken protocol. Xir'Vok's voice turned cold. That's the problem. He's using our rules against us. He tapped the control. Time to break him properly. The sirens weren't loud. They were low, like a mechanical growl under the skin of the prison walls. That was how Elias knew it was real. Emergency codes didn't shriek here. They hummed like something alive. He was dragged from sleep by 2 guards in reinforced armor. Not the usual muscle. They wore full exosuits. Not for his protection. For theirs. No words. Just a stunned pulse to the back. Enough to make him stumble without falling. They escorted him down levels he hadn't seen before, past bulkheads labeled in a script he didn't recognize. No cameras. No other prisoners. Only steel and silence. Finally, the door opened into a long chamber. Dark, cold, silent. In the center, a transparent cube waited. Thick glass-like alloy reinforced with null-field generators. Inside it, a simple bench. Nothing else. A voice crackled overhead. Step in, Cade, or we make you. Elias hesitated. Then he walked inside. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. They called it the isolation cell. Not for punishment. For observation. No contact. No feedback. Just silence and 100 eyes watching from behind invisible walls. He sat on the bench and closed his eyes. Breathing slow. Controlled. His heartbeat slowed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. And then nothing. No guards. No lights. No movement. The cube didn't hum. The walls didn't blink. It was a perfect sensory void. Elias's mind wandered, not to the prison or the Concord, or even Earth. He thought about sand. Warm. Red. Home. 10 years old. Arizona Badlands. His father teaching him to find water where there shouldn't be any. You look for patterns, Eli. His dad had said, tapping the brittle dirt. See the bend in the dry roots? That's moisture hiding. Even the land lies. You just have to be more patient than the lie. He'd remembered that lesson more than once, especially in prisons that tried to bury him in silence. 3 hours in, the walls flickered. Just for a moment, Elias didn't move. The second flicker was longer, a pulse, subtle, almost subconscious. But Elias was watching for lies. They were testing something. He stood up, walked to the far corner, leaned his forehead against the invisible wall, and whispered, "I know you're watching." No response. You want me to crack. You want the Death Worlder to rage, scream, break. But I'm not just from Earth. He smiled faintly. I'm from Arizona. The light snapped off. Total darkness. Then a sound, not through his ears, through his skull. A frequency. Low, thrumming, primal. A psychological weapon. Concord tech use it in wars to destabilize combatants, triggering instinctive dread responses in over 300 species. They use it now on a single man, but Elias didn't panic. He sat, cross-legged, breathing steady. When the frequency changed pitch, he matched it with his own hum, quiet, controlled. He turned their weapon into a song. Hours passed. Then a voice, soft female, synthetic, spoke directly into the cube. Subject 197 Cade. Autonomic response consistent with baseline. No anomalies. Initiate phase 2. Elias raised an eyebrow. You should have led with phase 2. This one's boring. No reply. The cube shifted, literally. The walls changed color. Red, then green, then UV. Rapid flickers. Flashing stimuli engineered to disrupt cognition. A strobe designed for minds, not eyes. Elias kept his lids half closed. He thought of rain on glass, of static on an old screen, and again of his father. After what felt like hours, the cube stopped shifting. The door opened with a slow exhale. Elias stood, blinking against the sterile corridor light. A figure waited. Warden Xir'Vok. His mandibles twitched in irritation. You performed better than expected. Elias wiped dust from his sleeves. Not my first silent treatment. Xir'Vok circled him. You show restraint. Intelligence. Patience. Traits uncharacteristic of Death Worlders. Your file writers didn't do their homework. They will revise. Elias locked eyes with him. Is that why I'm still alive? Xir'Vok's mandibles froze. You are useful, but you are not untouchable. He turned, voice sharpening. Torvak. Stepped forward. The Ricari enforcer emerged from the shadows, eyes downcast. Elias stiffened. You brought him into this? Xir'Vok ignored the question. Torvak has violated internal neutrality protocols by consorting with a destabilizing agent. That carries consequences. Torvak met Elias's gaze, no fear, no apology, just understanding. Elias took a slow step forward. He hasn't done anything but talk. Exactly, Xir'Vok said. And talk in here can be more dangerous than knives. He gestured. Guards seized Torvak and dragged him down the hall. Elias started forward. Was blocked. Try, Xir'Vok hissed, and I'll erase him from every corridor in this block. There won't be a single cell that remembers he ever existed. Then he walked away. Back in his standard cell, Elias sat on the cold floor. The air was heavier now, not because of silence, but because it had been punctured. They didn't need to kill him. Not yet, but they could kill everything around him. He stared at the metal wall. Not lost, just calculating. He now understood the game. It wasn't about escape. It was about influence. Power here wasn't muscle or claws. It was memory. And memory, when shared, became fear. A whisper came from the vent above. 3 words, barely audible, Still here, human. Elias smiled faintly. So Xir'Vok wasn't broken. Not yet. Then neither was he. Elias Cade had never escaped a prison by digging a hole. He didn't have to. He'd learned long ago that the fastest way out was through, not the walls, but the people holding them up. Find the right cracks in the hierarchy. Tap them, push them, make them collapse under their own pressure. He just needed one final push. It started with the air. Recycle flow from the ventilation system, tapped in 2 access shafts between Block F and the main surveillance bay. It carried whispers, messages, promises, warnings. The inmates pass them in code, grunts, gestures, flicks. By the time the guards noticed, it was already in motion. You're planning something, Officer Nealon said, arms crossed outside Elias's cell. She wasn't Concord-born. Her accent still carried the clipped edge of the Ectory moons. Elias sat cross-legged on the bench, hands folded loosely. Calm, steady. You ever feel like you're part of something that forgot why it exists? Nealon's expression didn't change, but she didn't speak either. This place, Elias continued, was built to keep threats out, not in. But now it's just feeding on itself. You think that justifies undermining protocol? I think this prison's already undermined. I'm just letting the termites meet each other. Elsewhere, 2 Ricari guards entered the mess hall. A third followed, and found himself locked inside. The lights dimmed, then flashed twice. A signal. That was when the shouting started. One fight. Not real. Stage. Enough to divert every available enforcer from Control Wing 2 to the mess. Right on cue, someone sealed the backup door. The prison had never trained for organized defiance. Xir'Vok stormed into the control tower 10 minutes later. The screens were flickering, some dark, others repeating strange feedback loops. The engineers inside were pale, sweating. What happened to surveillance? No idea, sir, said one. Something piggybacked on the inmate ID beacons. It's looping live feeds back with delay. Which sectors? 14 out of 20. And the human? The engineer swallowed, vanished off the grid. Elias wasn't far. He and Xir'Vok moved through the maintenance corridors, tight metallic, echoing with distant chaos. Xir'Vok's hulking form took the lead, his steps precise and eerily quiet for someone so massive. You didn't have to come back, the Ricari muttered. They marked me. Elias gave a tight smile. Then I figured I'd make the mark matter. They stopped at a side panel. Elias knelt, opening it with a crude spike made from repurposed tray metal. What are we doing? Xir'Vok asked. Changing the rules. In the warden's command center, more systems failed. The primary AI went into lockdown. Security doors opened without warning, then slammed shut. Lights flickered. Grav control stuttered. Cells opened. Not all, but enough. And then the real message played. Across every speaker, in every language the inmates understood. You are not alone. Elias's voice. Calm. Defiant. You were sent here to disappear. But what if we made ourselves seen? What if the galaxy had to watch? Rock's mandibles twitched, traced that signal. It's not from inside, a tech stammered. It's being relayed from every comm node at once. Elias had hijacked the prison's own infrastructure. He didn't need to escape. He needed to broadcast. Xir'Vok stood watch while Elias keyed the final sequence. We send this to whom? The Ricari asked. Everyone. Civilian networks. Concord peacekeepers. Independent sectors. Doesn't matter. Someone will listen. And if no one cares, they'll care after they see the footage. Every brutality. Every silence cry. Every execution hidden behind blacked-out logs. Elias had collected it all. We're not prisoners, he said. We're witnesses. Guards poured into the access corridor, led by Nealon. She stopped when she saw Elias. No weapon. Elias asked, glancing at her empty holster. I left it behind, she replied. Felt wrong bringing it to a funeral. Xir'Vok growled. I'm not here to stop you, Nealon added. Then why are you here? She met Elias's gaze. To see what happens next. The feed went live. A dozen star systems lit up with emergency alerts. The Concorde scrambled for damage control. The public, human and alien alike, saw unfiltered truth. The worst prison in the quadrant wasn't secure. It was rotting from the inside. Back inside the prison, chaos bloomed. Fights, confusion, then something new. Cooperation. Prisoners from warring species standing together. Guards refusing orders. Locks deactivating. No explosions. No bloodbath. Just collapse. A system too confident to defend itself from someone who didn't need to fight. Just reveal. Later, in a secured chamber beneath Concorde jurisdiction, Elias Cade stood in handcuffs again. This time, he smiled. You bypassed every containment protocol we had. The Concorde interrogator said, I used your own infrastructure. You caused a planetary crisis. No, Elias replied. I uncovered one. You humiliated your species in front of the entire galaxy. Elias looked up, calm and fearless. I reminded them what we are. A death worlder, yes, but not a monster. A man who walked into hell and made the devil look small.